Hello, Austin County. Today I am here with Pastor Rusty Griffin, and he is going to talk to us about his very unique ministry. It is a prison ministry, something that's very needed. Pastor Rusty, thank you for being here with us today.
It's an honor, Shelley, to be here with you and Greg and to be able to share a little bit about what I do outside of the county.
Wonderful. Well, let's start. For those that don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Rusty Griffin. I've been the lead pastor at Christian City Fellowship for 33 years. Just recently finished a doctorate in theology with a specialization in semiotics. The Greek definition for disciple or word is mathletes, which means a continual learner. So I've sought to be a continual learner. Turning 62 next week, and celebrating all these things because we keep learning, we keep growing, and we keep pushing on.
Right. All right. So prison ministry, people are, how does that come about? What inspired you to start this? Did you just wake up one day and you were like, hey, I'm going to do this?
Well, life is a journey, and a journey is a lot of stories in it. And so, I went to England to a really significant pastors conference, and I'm sitting there with my wife on the front row the last day, and the speaker stopped and he said, Rusty, so I've got a strange word for you. So I don't know what this means, but I'm going to give it to you. He said, the Lord said he's about to give you sons, spiritual sons in dark places. And so my wife and I, we looked at each other like, I don't know what that means. I don't even know if that's good,
Right.
Well, about a month later, I was in Angola Prison, just checking the bucket list. Mike Barber invited me to come with him and Brother Copeland, Kenneth Copeland. And so I'm like, I've known of this notorious prison my whole life. So certainly I want to go. So I went just basically to go and to observe. And, we had a great service. I closed for Brother Copeland in the rodeo arena. We had 6,000 inmates out. And then I went to, I thought they gave me an easy assignment. I went to the area for all of the trustees. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. They gave me the easiest job. I don't have a prison ministry. I'm just watching prison. And so I went that night and preached, and then came back and ate with Warden Cain. And then he asked to meet with me at breakfast the next morning. And he asked me, so what did you do down there? And I thought I was in trouble. I was like, well, Warden, I just preached a message and closed, said everything went well. He said, do you know what they did after you left? I said, I have no clue.
Oh, no.
He said, those guys stayed up all night and they worked out all of their problems and all of their differences. He said, I need you to come back. And I told him, I said, I don't have a prison ministry. This is my first time in a prison. I have no prison ministry. I didn't want to come back, didn't plan on coming back, but he twisted my arm a little bit. And so I came back a little bit, and then he asked me, hey, will you start overseeing all of the inmate pastors? And so I started doing that, and then that turned into doing it for the whole state of Louisiana. So I basically oversaw the pastors of 54 different churches, and we began to draw the prison together and more unity than ever before. And so they would bus those leaders and pastors from throughout the state, which is similar to what I do in Mississippi now.
Right.
And so we brought a real reunity and a real change that was lacking. And out of that, I still don't tell people I have a prison ministry. And what I do is a whole lot more than ministry.
Well, right.
It deals with wardens all the way down to inmates. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I wasn't looking for it.
And the Louisiana Penitentiary, I looked it up because I honestly didn't know there was one there. And so I looked it up. It's, I tell you, it's something I don't know that I could do. So your journey obviously was led from beginning to end. All right. Now, you go and you tell people, oh, I'm going to start a prison ministry, or I'm going to do this. What did people say? What, did they say, you can't do that? Did you have obstacles? Did you have people say, no, that's a dumb idea?
You always have opposition to prison ministry.
Right.
And yet Jesus said, when you go to the prison, he said, you don't bring me to the prison. He said, I'm in the prison.
Right.
And you visit me. And so if you're looking at missions or taking up money for orphans or for Africa, people are always generous,
Right.
which I thank God for that. But then when you do prison, and it's not that I require and need tons of money to do what I do. It's just people have a little bit different reaction. But the thing is you better hope somebody like me is doing a job, because our prisons are failing throughout the whole nation. Our prisons are failing. And what Commissioner Cain, who is a real hero in my life, what he has done is he has begun to operate a prison from the inside out. Free people, number one, they don't really run a prison. They're in charge and they have guns. But a prison runs much better when the inmates run it from the inside out. Now, obviously, you're taking murderers, rapists, serial killers, everything you can imagine. And I've heard stories that are beyond human consumption that I wouldn't dare even share. But the fact of the matter is that God is into transformation. He's not into just giving you a little bit of moral knowledge and making you smarter. He doesn't want to make a better me. He wants to make a brand new me.
Right.
He crucifies me, I die, and I become a new creature in Christ. And when you see this work inside a prison, I mean, I'm talking inside the worst, the hellhole that you can't even begin to imagine. And you see it start to run safe, and you see it where my wife goes in and out, my daughter goes in and out, and I never have a worry, not a single worry. They go anywhere they want to go. Now, when I first went in there, it wasn't like that.
Right.
But Warden Cain believes in what he calls, and there's a reason because of the ACLU, we call it moral rehabilitation. Okay. What it literally is, it's Jesus. And so, but if we say Jesus, people don't care how great the prison's doing,
right,
how the crime has gone down. You just can't have Jesus in a prison. So they'd rather have people murdering people and not have Jesus. But I'm going to tell you, Jesus can transform any place because he's not into making you smart.
Right.
He's into transformation. And when you see a guy, you know, I won't use names, but a friend of mine, one day I asked him, I said, you know, why did you kill 18 people? And he turned just like this. He said, Pastor, because there wasn't 19.
Oh.
I said, oh, you killed them all.
Wow.
And he did. And he's a fantastic preacher today. He's not going to get out. He's not going to, a lot of my guys have, and we'll maybe talk about that later, with life sentences. And do I believe in prison? Absolutely. Lock them up. Put them in prison. I'm not easy on crime, man. You do the crime, you're going to do the time.
Right.
But Warden Cain, Commissioner Cain, he has a motto. He says, we're going to be as nice to you as you let us, or we're going to squash you like a bug.
Right.
And I've seen them squashed, and I've seen what the power of God can do to where men are living together without uniforms, and they're living as a community, as one community, and there's no violence. I've seen that. I've watched that with my eyes.
Amazing. I was say we have a picture here, and these are some of the gentlemen that you've worked with. Now there's a video camera or a monitor that's teleconferencing.
Yeah, this was a unique, what happens in Mississippi is that they bus all of their pastors and their main leaders. It's not just pastors, but leaders in the prison. They bus them to me. We had, without naming names, we had a particular inmate, and this happens sometimes, that their crimes are so heinous and so bad that whenever they transport them, they have to let family members know they're being not stopping, just driving through the county.
Wow.
And on this particular instance, because of one of our inmates, we weren't able to get them all with me. So that's the first one we did where we zoomed and hit several prisons because we weren't able to all come together. So we have to work at getting everybody together. But the normal is they bus everybody to me, usually Parchman. I've 3 different prisons I teach out of, North, Central, and South. So I kind of spread them out. And then I train the guys on how to run a prison.
So as I say, and so we have a couple of other pictures here of, let's go back.
Yeah.
Is it more
and that was another video conference. You can't see all the rest of the guys, but there's different ones that, jump in and they're able to hear live. And then also these guys, they love to say, hey man, how are you doing? We miss you.
I was to say, and what are they discussing?
In this, I'm teaching a lot of theology. I'm teaching things from psychology. I'm teaching about how to be a leader. I'm teaching about how to be a pastor of a church. And so literally, if something bad happens in prison and you just send guards with guns, it's better to send my guys.
Right.
My guys can handle situations a lot better than guards can.
I was going to say, but I would think too, that's kind of that old thing of you wouldn't send, a 10-year-old to help a child. You would send a mom. It's kind of the same idea.
And these guys are very respected. Okay. So I need to state that. In Mississippi is different than Louisiana in the fact that we have tremendous gang presence. Now, who would think in Mississippi there would be huge gang presence? But there is, and it's basically the gangs out of Chicago, and they come into the prisons. And they make a lot of money, and they also win a lot of guards over on their side because a guard can make more working for the the gangs than it can working for the state. So
Sadly.
It's a continual problem. But what happens in that situation is that a lot of times the gang member gets more attention than anybody else in the prison. Why? Because he's got all the money. He's got all the stuff. He's got control. Well, what we do is, and we have a place we send these guys, and it's not good. It's not fun, and we squash them. But what we do is we take my guys and we give them a golf cart. Can you imagine being an inmate and you have your own transportation in prison? And they're like, who was that guy that just went by? Well, that's Pastor so-and-so.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying these guys are perfect because none of us are perfect.
Right.
But the transformation that they've come from to the place they are, and then everybody knows, they know this guy. We know that guy was a gang member. He killed a lot of people. And now he's preaching Jesus and reconciliation and healing, and he's peaceful. The guy who founded AB, the Aryan Brotherhood, he's a very good friend of mine. Psycho is his name. My wife asked me one day, she says, do you think he likes being called Psycho? I said, maybe. Everybody calls him Psycho.
Right.
Pappy Boyington, the famed aviator, the leader of Baa Black Sheep, that's his grandfather. But he was huge into the Aryan Brotherhood, and he hated black people. And now I got another great big black guy who was the black enforcer in the gangs. He's got horns that come out. You know, all of these tattoos mean something.
Right.
Gangs know what that is. He's an enforcer. He didn't just like murder people off the street. He killed all the gang people. And he hated white people. Those guys sit side by side and they love each other. They hug each other. They support each other. They both killed a lot of people. But it's what God can do with them in prison that has totally changed their life. If I tell you this is Psycho and let me show you all of his tattoos, let me tell you about all the people he killed, you'd be like, this guy? No, seriously. Yeah, that guy.
Wow.
But he's not the same person.
Right.
How many guys, I mean, again, I can speak stories for hours. Yeah. But it's amazing to see transformation. And guess what? If it can happen in the bloodiest place, the vilest place, the worst place, if it can happen there, just imagine what, if we let God have his way, we can do here in the free world.
Wow. Okay. Well, that kind of, I guess, brings me to my next question is, you've got this, how do you measure success? Now, you mentioned this gentleman.
Yeah, that's Reggie Watts. That is the only man in prison that kissed me every time he saw me. Because, kissing's not a good thing in prison.
Right.
Yeah, that's Reggie Watts. He had a life sentence without parole. He did some things, a lot of drug stuff that led to other things. But Reggie is now one of our chaplains in Mississippi. He was one of my inmates I trained in Angola. I have several of my inmates I trained in Angola. 2 of them have actually become wardens. So now you're imagining a guy going from a death sentence to like being a warden. I said, yeah, with God, all things are possible. So that's the mark of really, really great success. Reggie, believe it or not, Reggie married a police officer. His wife is a retired, she just retired like 8 months ago, a retired police officer. They have an incredible life. And every time he would see me, and he used to preach, he was back in the C compound. C is where all of the men were, well, a lot of them, and everybody back there worked in the field. So in Angola, we have a chain gang.
Oh, okay.
I mean, real chains on your ankles, and you march, and it's forced labor, and you get 2 cents an hour. Well, all of those guys were back there. It was a really, really rough place. And Reggie, every time I would go back there, the place would be packed, standing room only, people squeezed in. It was just amazing. And then my wife started going back there and preaching. And they really loved my wife. And so Reggie is a unique guy. And every time he sees me, and he still does it, now he's a free person. He's a chaplain in Parchment Prison. He said, Pastor, that's my pastor. And he kisses me on this cheek, and he kisses me on that cheek. And he said, that's my pastor. And so to see the success and to see what he's done and to see the commitment and the involvement, but I've got a lot of Reggies. He's not the only one.
I was going to say, this is some of your other.
Yeah, that's Reggie. And these guys, yellow, you learn uniforms. Those guys are in transit. Those are actually some pastors that came down, and I went to see them off, kind of because they were getting handcuffed and treated like they were a common guy in prison. I'm like, dude, these are my pastors. Y'all don't handcuff these guys. You got to realize, and again, that's the honor that you earn,
right?
The respect that you get. Now, it takes at least 10 years to become a trustee. So, they work at this. And the question that people have is, do they get jailhouse religion? Not when you've got a life sentence.
See, that was my question. You hear about a lot of people, oh yeah, I found Jesus. They get out, and they use it as a crutch.
Well, at Angola, we had 4,600 men with life sentences without the chance of parole. They didn't even have a parole hearing. They didn't go before anybody. They had a life sentence. And so, I was preaching after I'd been in about 2 years. I had hundreds of guys in front of me and mostly leaders. And the Lord spoke to me, and he told me that I just said what God said. This door's going to open on this prison. You guys are going to be getting out of here faster than you can even imagine.
I bet they all laughed, didn't they?
They did laugh. And at the end of the service, several of my good friends came up to me and they said, now, Pastor, you've been coming here for a few years, and I thought you understood and you realize we die here. We don't get out. We die here.
Right.
Everybody dies here. And I said, that's not what God said. Anyway, long story short, over 500 of these men are now out, and they're doing well. Not one person has recommitted. Not one person has had a problem. Many of them, believe it or not, are working in the penitentiary system, working in reentry, working for judges. They're just,
wow.
But it's because they love prison. Now, what do you mean they love prison?
Yeah.
They would be dead and they would be in hell if it wasn't for prison. And they realize prison saved my life.
Right.
And so I tell a lot of people, like their son's going to prison or a friend's going to prison. I'm like, hey, prison's a wonderful place. Now, when Jesus gets a hold of it, there can be transformation.
Right.
And with Commissioner Cain, that's what is foremost and up front, is we're going to bring these guys and give them an opportunity for transformation. They can choose. We're not just trying to make smart guys or smart Christians. We're trying to transform lives. And that's what Jesus is all about. And so these guys are now serving in prisons because if it wasn't for the prison, they'd be lost and dead.
All right. Now this picture shows a bunch of ladies. Now you talk about your guys.
Yeah, these are some of the ladies. And we just had our very first graduation from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. I had 17 ladies graduate with a bachelor's degree in ministry. And so I'm restarting all of this over with the ladies. This was at Central in Jackson. And this is just one of these things that happened. I started meeting with a bunch of the ladies that were the main leaders. They lived in a place that was for conjugal visits, and there's no conjugal visits at all in Mississippi. We have some of the men living on the other side, but they lived there and they helped to run the prison. And so I started meeting under trees with them. And they're like, man, we want you to come. We want you to come. We want you to come. So I didn't start out to do that. That was something that just happened.
It just happened.
And so I started teaching them and go in to see them. We had 998 women there at that prison. And we have one lady on death row and only one. But yeah, that was another thing that God did and I just started doing. And now I'm about to put my wife, because my wife traveled to Angola. She's been with me many, many times. It took a while to get Parchman to a place of where my wife would be safe.
Right.
And she is, but I don't let her, she doesn't have the run of the place like she did Angola. But I do take her places and the inmates, love and respect her. And so really what our attempt is we're the family of God, is to have family, to make family. My kids have come in with me. I try to share that. And God's blessed me. I don't want anybody to think, oh, poor me, I'm suffering and sacrificing. I think I'm more blessed than the guys I minister to.
Wow. So here's another picture of now who's the gentleman?
That is George King. He is actually a warden.
Okay.
He's one of my very best friends. And what is amazing is the very first time I ever went into prison, we were trying to figure this out. And I was like, I got no idea, because I was asked, when was your first? I got no idea. I said, Brother Copeland. And George said, I know when it was. I got the notes from what you preached. I said, you're kidding me. Because this is like 15 years later.
Right.
He pulled out the notes and my whole message. He said, here's the date. Brother Copeland was with you. Mike Barber was with you. And I was like, George King, I can't believe it. George went into prison. He was illiterate. He was a drug trafficker. He was into heavy, big money drugs, flying all over the world and doing that kind of stuff. Got a life sentence without parole, got in prison, learned how to read, got saved, transformed his life, got an education, graduated from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, became the first missionary. You say missionary, what are you talking about missionary? You got missionaries in prison? We do. We have prisons that need help, and so we need to send a missionary. And so they get $50 a month, and they go to a bad prison where the director, the warden, the superintendent, they got different titles in different places.
Right.
They say, man, we got a problem. We need some help. Will you send us somebody? And we send them a missionary, and they make a 2-year commitment to be there, and they come back for my classes. But, you know, you don't ever think terms of in prison missionaries.
No.
We had missionaries. We even have youth pastors.
Wow.
Yeah, of course, praise and worship leaders, associate pastors, deacons, elders. I mean, when I say they have church, they don't have a fake church. They don't have a made-up church. They're not trying to do church. They're being the church in prison.
Okay, so you've got these, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean, I admit it, I didn't know. What are some of the biggest misconceptions? You know, you think, okay, I've got this huge guy. He's got tats all over him. You know, maybe missing a few teeth, knife scars, whatever else. I'm scared of this guy, you know, and he's going to come and tell me about Jesus. You know, how do you correct those misconceptions, I guess?
Well, when I made my very first trip into prison, we were also showing the Super Bowl. And that's a big event, you know. I mean, sports is huge. Men love sports, and we had a big screen, and they don't get to watch it on, you know, when I talk about, I'm talking little TVs, big screen. So we got that all set up, and I'm just sitting there waiting for all the men to come in. I'm just sitting on the second row. Just, again, my very first time. Angola's famous. I've heard about it my whole life. Here I am, checking the box, never coming back.
Right.
And this big black man came and sat down right next to me. He put his arm around me. I'm kind of, you know, like, I'm not freaking out, but I'm like, I don't think this is normal.
Right.
And he leaned down to me, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. You scared? And I looked back at him. I said, no. I said, I'm not really scared, but I'm apprehensive. I mean, I don't really fear a lot of men, but I know this is a bad place. And he said, I got you. You're okay.
Wow.
That guy later on became my bodyguard. At the very beginning, I worked with guards, and yeah, you can't really do what I do and be with guards. And so the warden said, man, you just do whatever you want to do. Go anywhere you want to go. Do anything you want to do. You don't need anybody. So Rambo came to me one day. I led him to the Lord. He wasn't a pastor. He wasn't in my classes. He wanted to be in my classes. He said, Pastor, you can't be going to places you're going. This is too dangerous. You can't go by yourself. This is crazy. It's not gonna end good, he said.
Right.
And I said, well, Rambo, what do you want me to do? He said, I'll go with you. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, I'll carry your books. You be over here. I'll be over there. Everybody will know that I'm with you. Believe me. He said, everybody will know.
Wow.
And they're not going to mess with us. And so I said, you would do that? He would meet me at the gate. And when the door was open, he would take my books. He would walk with me anywhere, everywhere, stay in the background. And he became my bodyguard.
I was going to say, but that kind of goes with the people inside know how to know what's what. So if they know this guy, which for good or bad will squash them.
Yeah.
If you mess with their friend.
He earned the name Rambo. Rambo, everybody in prison, and unfortunately, fortunately in some ways, I know more guys by their nicknames than their real name. I said, I got no idea what his name is. But everybody calls him Rambo. Everybody calls him Psycho. You know, I know the nicknames. Rambo's very first night in prison, he shanked a guy.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, like I said, he's a big boy, works out on the iron pile. I go in and work out on the iron pile with him. And he was a big boy. But what I found and what I was very successful at doing is I was successful at going in and getting the worst of the worst saved.
Yeah.
Another story. This is a guy, I didn't even find this out until I was in Mississippi, and I got introduced by a warden. There was a guy, and, you know, I'm always looking for the bad guys. Rambo was with me. It was just me and him. He said, there's Freddie over there. I said, I'm going to go talk to him. He said, no, Pastor. You can't go talk to Freddie. He's got his posse with him. You can't go talk. I said, no, I'm going to go talk to Freddie. And so I walked over, and Freddie wasn't wearing a shirt, which is not allowed in prison. You have to wear a shirt. The reason he wasn't wearing a shirt is he has 15 scars in his chest. Very obvious he's been shot. So,
All right.
so I walked over, and you got to know that the Holy Spirit's talking to you when you do some of these things. So I walked over to Freddie. He sees Rambo back in the background, and I walked up to him. I took my finger and I stuck him in all of his scars, and I backed him up against the brick.
Right.
And I looked at him eyeball to eyeball, and I said, boy, if I would have shot you, you'd be dead. And I just guessed. I said, I don't carry no 9mm. I carry a 45. Oh my gosh. You got to know the Lord's telling you to do that.
Yeah.
Because his posse is around. Do we jump on the white boy? What do we do, And so they're all watching. And then before he could have just a huge reaction, I said, I'm preaching tonight at 7:00 down at such and such. I want you to be there. And then he went off. He's like, church? You think I go to church? Who do you think I am? You think I go to... And this is where I got him. I leaned over where everybody couldn't hear it. And I said, Freddie, I understand. I said, you're scared to come to church. Oh, that set him off more. Scared? You think I'm scared?
Right.
You think I'm scared? I said, Rambo, I'll get him to sit next to you and he'll protect you. All right. So we left, and Rambo's like, you can't go over there, Pastor. It's going to end bad. This is going to be a fight.
Right.
It's not 7:00. I get there. Who is sitting right in front of the pulpit? Freddie. He's 3 feet away from me. I preached. He cried like a girl.
Oh.
He was the first hand to go up in the air, gave his heart to the Lord. We became good friends. He was still is a famous referee. He's very athletic. But I'm in Mississippi prison being introduced, and the warden has introduced me. He said, you've never met anybody like Pastor Rusty. I said, this guy's crazy. He does all kinds of stuff. And he said, let me tell you a story about a guy named Freddie. And so, yeah, I know the story. What I didn't know is Freddie was the biggest #1 hitman in New Orleans. He made his first contract kill at age 12.
Oh my gosh.
He was shot 15 times with an AR. It was Full Metal Jacket, thank goodness, or it would have killed him. And those are like badges. That's what he wears. But I said, he was a what? He was a hitman. Y'all forgot to tell me that. I didn't know Freddie was a hitman. And Freddie gave his life to Christ. And after that, the guy who's killed the most people in prison, I led him to the Lord. And God can change people, but you got to love them.
Yeah.
And so I can love people. God made us to, the twin love is you got to love God, but you got to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
So I don't go in and judge people. I don't look down my nose, because I know 2nd-degree murder, I can do that.
You're just way braver than I am. But we have some pictures here. I'm going to let you, before we move on, more questions, tell us a little more about some of these guys.
Yeah, this is at a place we call the Ark. And the Ark was started by inmates. These guys started this. And what this was an attempt, very successful attempt. They would take inmates in the prison that they choose, and they would give them this opportunity to come into the Ark. You move into the Ark, you live in the Ark, you're 24/7 around guys that are helping you change your life. That's from drugs, addictions. You can get any drug you want in prison. Any drug you want.
Good to know.
I can tell you tons of stories, but don't think that there's no drugs in prison. There's anything you want in prison. And they literally took these guys and transformed them. 40 men, 40 days, new 40 men, 40 days, all their idea, their creation. Malachi Men, another creation that the men did. It's in at least 18 different nations that these men realized that they were not good fathers, and how could they become a better father? And they went to the commissioner and said, we'd like to train men on how to be fathers. We had at one time, we had 3 different, grandpa, dad, son, all on, murder charges.
Oh.
We've had a dad and a son on death row, both be executed. We have to break this cycle. And they realized we were poor dads, and we want to teach how to be greater dads. And that's how Malachi Men started. So a lot of these men, they initiate things, they begin things, and it's amazing what they can do if you give them an opportunity.
I was going to say this.
And guys love to eat.
Yes.
That's in central Mississippi, in Jackson.
I would say this kind of goes with my next question is how do you structure your ministry sessions? Is it we talk first and then we do church? Is it completely freestyle? Is it I have an idea, I'm going to preach on these things?
I get on for as long as I want them.
Okay.
All day long. Sometimes they spend the night with me. Sometimes they have to go back into a prison part where we segregate and keep them so that we can get them in and out. But yeah, I basically lay out a system, and I've been doing this for 18 years. I've got a lot of stuff in this direction, in this field.
Okay.
And I call my guys, I give them a moniker, I give them a name of keepers of the flame. Because in the temple, there was a light that the priests were responsible for keeping lit. And these men keep a light lit in the prison that only they can keep lit. Free people, the guards, the wardens, they can't keep this light. These guys are the light. Jesus said, you're the light in the world. And so these guys are a light that shine into the world. And as they shine into the world, guess what? Other inmates want what they have because they see the peace, they see the joy, and then they see the miracles. Because, I mean, it's a miracle that these guys have ever gotten out. But like I said, the Lord prophesied, spoke that to me. I got to watch that. I've actually had the privilege, and when I say a privilege, remember, understand, I am for prison. I am not trying to get guys out of prison.
Right.
But I'll tell you this, every inmate knows the guys that should be out and the guys that shouldn't be out. And I'm working to try to help that along also. Right. But they can change and they can get saved and they can turn their lives around, and then they're responsible to change somebody else's life.
Okay, so they basically have a charge. They don't think, take care of you, and then
I bring a curriculum, I bring a study, I bring something, but it's always geared in a direction. And I teach on that, and literally when I get them, they're mine for as long as I want them until I tell them, all right, y'all go to bed.
All right.
The time I took them fishing, and I've done it twice now in September.
Oh, here, wait, let's go back. There you go.
Yeah, there they are. And that's just a little puddle of them. I had, I think it was 48, man. It was 48 to 50 guys. But like I said, the state was on lockdown because of the murder, a gang murder. Entire state's on lockdown. And so, you know, the commissioner says, oh, lockdown's not for you. That's for the state. So I took these guys out and they cried. Grown men. Now, I'm going to tell you something about prison too, is you don't cry in front of men either.
Right.
These guys wept and they cried. And they said, Pastor, this is the greatest day of my life. At 11:30 that night, because they couldn't wait. We caught so many catfish. We caught so many fish. I was like, hey, man, we'll have a great lunch. We'll eat them. And I'm like, Pastor, so we want to eat them tonight. I said, man, you got to be kidding me. You realize what time it is? At 11:30 that night, we were eating catfish and French fries and hush puppies. And these guys, because I totally trust these guys.
Here, wait, let's see. I had a picture of you. There you go, feeding. That's not the same thing.
Yeah,
you said something about feeding.
Well, you know, Jesus, a lot of his ministry is around a table. Actually, at Christian City Fellowship, I teach from a table.
Okay.
Because a table is very special. And in Judaism, everything revolves around the table.
Right.
After the second temple destruction, the most holy place shifted from being in the temple to being at the head of the table, where the father, the grandfather, the patriarch of the family would teach the kids. A 6-year-old Jewish child knew every story in the Pentateuch, every single story.
Right.
So they got their identity. Today we've got kids on TikTok looking for their identity.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you don't want your kid getting their identity. And these guys, what did they do? They had a bad identity. They got identified with a gang, got identified with this or that. They didn't know who they were. They were lost. And there's a lot of people that are lost. You don't have to be in prison to be lost.
No.
You know, people are living a lost life all the time and seeking identity and not understanding their identity. Whereas my identity comes from the scripture. My identity comes from Christ, who I am in Christ. I teach these guys who they are. I was crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life I live in this flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians 2:20. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. My life is hid in Christ. So I saturate them with the word so that they can begin to understand their identity in Christ and who they are in Christ. And what that does is it produces a dramatic change in behavior. So this is not behavior modification.
Right.
And I can talk that, and I can talk the psychology lingo, but we're not doing behavior modification. What we're doing is we're raising up brand new people.
I was gonna say I came across this one too. Again, we've got the food, but you said that you when you came to visit these guys that you brought them Krispy Kreme donuts.
I did. Yeah, those guys, and they love it, and I surprise them with stuff. Usually it's late at night when I come in, and this was a morning trip that I took with another officer. Got them some Krispy Kremes. Those guys right there in particular, they run the front half. They're in and out of the warden's house. I mean, you wouldn't even know these guys were inmates except they're in with their stripes on. That's how much trust some of these guys have. And those are some really, really special guys. They're not pastors. They're not preachers. They're not leaders. They help take care of me when I'm there. They cook for me. They do stuff for me. They iron my clothes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, anything I want. And, in Angola, they'd call me and say, Pastor, you coming? What do you want to eat? And, we have some of the best food and some of the best fellowship. That fellowship is an idea that we have to understand is scriptural. We need fellowship with one another. They need fellowship, but through the fellowship, they learn their identity.
I was going to say you talked about the table. That I think that's a huge problem because everybody who's watched Hello Austin County knows I was a teacher, and I've found that the children don't. I mean, there's no mom and dad that sit down. Greg and I were very lucky. 4:30 every evening, my dad walked through the door. We sat down and we ate, and it was, how was your day?
Yeah.
What did you do? And then that was the time, if mom would say, well, Shelley, we got a call from the school, you were talking too much. Surprise, surprise. We had a discussion. Why don't you, why is this not good? And how are you going to fix it? And a lot of these folks don't have that. And so they're looking for the fellowship and you're giving it to them.
Well, what's happening is they're missing their identity.
Right.
Everybody's looking for an identity. Everybody's looking to find what they can be. We're human beings. We're not human doings.
That's
what
true.
we be is more important than what we do because our doing should flow out of our being. But you take men, for example, men are, at this meal and they're walking around the room and they're introducing themselves. And somewhere in the equation, the question is going to rise, hey, what do you do?
Right.
They're measuring you.
Right.
They're trying to decide if they're better than you, if you're better than them. And they go by doing instead of being. What I am on the inside is a whole lot greater than what is on the outside. But the way God works is he transforms me from the inside out, and the devil works from the outside in. He works through condemnation, and there's no condemnation in Christ. But we become reconciled when we get our hearts right with God so that we can allow the good, the perfect will of God to be done. But if nothing works on the inside of you, nothing's working on the outside of you. When God changes the inside, he can change the outside. What do we do in prison? We put guys in prison. We try to change their outside without changing their inside.
Right.
It's fake. It's not real. It will not last. And it's the same way on the free world too. If you don't have something working mightily in you, you're not going to have much working mightily through you. And so that's the identity of the gospel.
Well, I was going to say, here's a question. Have you found a guy you couldn't crack yet? I say you, but
Not yet.
Okay.
I've got a guy on death row right now that, and let me just tell you something about death row. These guys have been on death row for a long time. I mean, it takes 20 to 30 years in the process.
Yeah.
Won't get into the details of that, but we've got some guys that are really tough on death row. Because of what we're doing, the warden went in one day and he unlocked every cell with the exception of 2. Guess how many people came out? None.
Why?
Nobody came outside of their cell. So the next week he walks in and just takes the key, clicks. All the cells except 2. We got 2 guys we don't let out. One of them is a guy I'm fixing to take out myself. But one person came out. Opened the door, came a step out, went back in and shut the door. Now let me tell you, on death row, they can't wait for the doors to be open. Now realize these guys have talked a lot of trash over the years to each other and about each other. And man, you better be glad these bars are in between me and you, because I'm going to do this to you and that to you. It's the biggest family you have ever seen. I very rarely even go to death row anymore. Why? They don't need me at death row. I'd rather hit the gang units and the gang wards. And these guys are all family in death row. And it's amazing. How did that happen? Well, transformation. They've been hearing the gospel behind bars. Now we take these guys out. They actually, well, imagine 20 years and you haven't put your foot on a piece of grass.
Right.
Imagine this. It's hard to think, but because anytime they're ever out, and they get out once a week to shower, they're out for an hour, but they're always shackled. Now, this is hard to believe, but I'm telling you a true story. With many of them, when they started walking, they got dizzy, lightheaded, and they almost fainted. I didn't understand that. I was like, what's happened? They said, Pastor, you don't realize how hard it is to walk and swing your hands. We haven't swung our hands and walked in decades. And it made them dizzy. Let me just say that when you're in prison, prison is punishment. No, period. Just being in prison is punishment. I know it. I've seen it. I've done it. I've been there. It's not rehabilitation.
Right.
And so a lot of times when we send people to prison, we send people there to punish them. Let me tell you, they're getting punished. Every person in prison is getting punished. What they need is rehabilitation, because let me tell you something. Some of these people, they're getting out because not everybody has a life sentence. Some of these guys have years, and what they do is they learn bad stuff from the bad guys, and they learn how to be even worse. And when they get out, you better hope that what I'm doing is working. You better hope that we're changing people's lives, because you're going to have to deal with a mess.
Right.
And so our prison system is broke.
Yeah.
And we need to change it. And I know a man. I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about Burl Cain. So I know two men. I got Jesus on one side. I got Burl Cain on the other. And the only thing he told me, he says, Rusty, he said, just do the right thing. And he's my boss, Jesus. And when I'm in prison, Commissioner Cain. But he trusts me to do the right thing. And the right thing is to love these people and to give them a chance and to give them some hope.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is, okay, so you've been there for a while, and obviously you come back and visit, correct? Okay, but when you're not there, I guess the other inmates, how's
it going?
Yeah, how do you keep their spiritual growth going when you're not there? Because we're all human, and it's that old thing. If you're there, they're like, oh, Pastor Rusty's here, we're going to do this. But when Pastor Rusty's gone and, so-and-so bumps me and I've had a bad day and I throw a punch, now I'm in trouble. I mean, I know what you're doing does not alleviate the tendency, so to speak, but yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm not 100% sure what I'm saying. How do you assure that they're going to keep going?
All right, well, this is kind of crazy, but in prison church, we have guys there that are enforcers.
In church?
In church.
Okay.
In case something breaks out, in case something happens. We have assigned guys to help. What we want to do is we want to help them not make a mess and not ruin their life and not do the wrong thing, but do the right thing. And so, again, you put, and at Angola Prison, our maximum capacity, we got up to right at 7,000 inmates. Wow. Inmates. That's not counting security and guards. That's just the inmate population. You put that much testosterone together in a place. I mean, we would have fights in Sealy. Right. That's a part of the natural course of some things that are going to happen that we know that we can alleviate. And it's not bad because these are bad men. It's bad because they're cramped up in the same quarters, the same place for whatever length of time. Just like with anybody, if we put all the men in Sealy in a cramped quarters and made them live there for a month without getting a break and seeing the sunshine, it probably would turn a little bit bad.
Right.
Well, we understand that. But what we do is we try to help these men. We try to help them to make the right choices. We encourage them. We try to keep them from getting in trouble. But like Warden Cain says, we're going to give you all the freedom. And when I talk about freedom, let me tell you some things. We have men in Angola owned restaurants. You don't have any clue what I'm talking about because you've never seen a prison like this. And so guys, free people and inmates buy from these restaurants. One of my Sidney DeLoach, very dear friend, he's one of our chaplains. He just recently had a stroke. When Sidney got a governor's pardon, he got released from Angola Prison, and he left $40,000 to his church.
Wow.
He made all of that money legally. He made it in prison. He made it the right way, and he had the heart of a giver. He didn't have to give $40,000
No, that's
to his church. He was a senior pastor, and he left that money. But Sidney also, he cooked food in prison. He was an incredible cook. And so to think, what are you talking about? No. Well, how do you do it? Well, we can't let churches do it because the ACLU comes in and tries to. So we have clubs, and the head of every club is a pastor. It's amazing what God can do. And Burl Cain thinks outside the box. He doesn't think inside the box.
right.
And so technically, you can't have one inmate over another inmate. We did that with the reentry. My bad guys got assigned a guy who has a short term, and they watched over him. They teach him, train him, get him ready for a reentry. We had a guy that one of my guys said, he's not ready. So this guy's got a temper. He's not ready. He killed somebody his first week out of prison because they wouldn't listen to my guy.
Right.
He is not ready. Do not let this guy out. But here's the good news is after he murdered this guy, guess who he called?
You?
No, he called his mentor in prison. And the mentor told him, you need to turn yourself in. And he turned himself in.
Wow.
Should have listened to the mentor to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so we know pretty much that you have the support of the prisons, with what you're doing. My curiosity is the guards. Have you had any of them decide that, maybe I need to turn my life over to Jesus?
I have, but I have more trouble with guards than I do inmates. And a lot of times it's because I don't know the guys on night shift, or I don't know, they know of me, but they don't all know me. And so when I show up and say, what are you doing? I'm going in there. They're like, I don't think you're going in here. And, and I just have to tell them who I am, and I'm okay. I mean, I'm in prison. How do you think I got here? Right. And then the other guys, well, you say, it's Pastor Rusty. And so, guards is a totally different thing. And I've actually written something to help this. But imagine you've got an 18-year-old kid, and they've graduated from high school, and they don't have any education beyond that. But they go through the few weeks course to become a guard. And now they have power over every man in the prison.
Right.
And I've chewed plenty guards out for bad things that they did. I've walked up to a line of men waiting at a door in the middle of rain, and the guard, just because he had power, he wouldn't open the door.
Oh.
I've seen that so many times.
Yeah.
And so literally it wouldn't be a false statement to say some of the guards are worse than some of the men we have in prison.
Yeah.
But it's the God syndrome when you have all this power and it's been given to you, and there's times where it's abused. We have guards on, the gang payroll. That's where the drugs come from.
Right.
That's how drugs get into prison. They make more money because you don't make a lot of money beginning as a high school graduate becoming a guard in prison. They can move up, but I'm just saying it's not a glamorous lifestyle.
Right.
And the commitment and the pressure and the stress that's on them, just like with police officers, divorce rate is high. It's not an easy job. It's a hard job. But it's hard on the guards. It's also hard on the inmates, and we can do a better job than that.
So you've had a few though do what they're supposed to.
I tell you all kinds of stories. Yeah.
All right. So, obviously you've gone quite a ways. My question is, what are your future plans? Do you have any big projects in the works?
I may have made my last trip into prison. I don't know. I never know. They could get rid of me at any moment, at any time. I am going the last week of February. I'll be there that week, bringing my wife. I'm going to introduce and start the women's prison. I'll do my guys. I'll get there Sunday night. I'll do them through Wednesday evening through Friday. I'll be in the women's prison. And literally, I'm training my wife to do that with the graduates plus other leaders that will join. But we have our first graduating class from Bible College, from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and we just want to praise and say good, wonderful things about NOBTS, incredible people, incredible program, and they make a huge difference. And we're just partnering together to make things better. Like I said, I take them after they graduate, and I teach them ministry and teach them about, feet on the ground and what we do. And I take them out and I do it with them, and I show them how to do it.
How many of it graduates have you had? Do you know?
Man, that's a good question.
Sounds like a lot.
I really probably should know that, but I'm just going to throw out a number of 300 to 400.
Okay. It sounded like it just kind of by looking at these pictures, how many, I see. Now here's the thing is that I know that this needs support. What if you're out there watching and you're like, this is a great thing. What can I do to support it?
Well, I didn't come here to try to raise support or to do anything of that nature.
I tell you what we're doing. We are hoping that the people that watch these videos, because most everybody has somebody that has been touched by violence in one way or another, whether it's, their friend, family member went in or, something has happened. And if they feel a calling after watching this to help, we want to make sure that they don't hit a dead end. Yeah. And so that's the thing is that, we're going to provide your information so that if they want to reach out to you, perhaps they know somebody, they're like, my dad really needs a visit or a call.
Well, I haven't been in a Texas prison in over a decade.
Okay.
Texas doesn't need me. And so literally I only go in the most violent prisons, the maximum security prisons. I've worked directly with the entire state of Louisiana, the entire state of Mississippi. Those are two of the worst states. But as far as help, praying is always incredible. We always need the prayers. Here's one thing that it's not much, but it means something tremendous to these guys, is every time I go, I always feed them at least one meal that I pay for myself. And it's amazing what we can do with a little bit because now the prison actually cooks stuff for me, but it's not prison food.
Right.
It's good food. It's food I eat, And basically I can feed all of my guys for $250. And feed them good. I'm not talking fancy.
Right.
But they love fried chicken. You don't get fried chicken. Literally what you get in prison, I know you guys wouldn't eat it. But if that's all you got,
right.
That's what you have to eat.
So it's almost like being in the service. It
is.
You get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
And they feed these guys on $1. I think it's $1.88 a day. That's 3 meals.
Oh.
Now imagine.
Right.
And I'm great friends with the person over all the food, and she's an amazing person, but she doesn't have much to work with.
Right.
And my favorite day is Thursday because that's cinnamon roll day.
Oh, yeah.
And they, believe it or not, they make some of the best cinnamon rolls. They only get it once a week.
Right.
But when you had a cinnamon roll once a week for 30 years, it's no longer special
right.
to you, because
right.
It's always special to me because I haven't been there 30 years. But they try to do the very best with what they have. But it's hard to feed somebody and to give them something nourishing that they actually enjoy. So I always do that because, again, the Bible, Jesus was always at a table. He was, of course, in trouble for the people he's feeding at the table. Right. It's like maybe I get in trouble with the inmates I feed at the table. But that's an incredible way to love on these best guys, these guys that are literally learning how to keep the prison violence down. I have one guy, and when you think about church, he has over 1,000 people in his church.
Right.
So I don't want people to think, there's 7 people gathered up in this corner. We showed one of the pictures was the brand new chapel that has been built on Parchman Prison.
I hear that.
And Commissioner Cain, he builds a chapel on every prison. It costs the state nothing. That's all raised through his missions department and fund. That's it. That's an amazing chapel. There's a baptistry back behind there. It's an amazing, and as you can see, it's packed. It's full of people. And you could actually give towards that chaplain's fund because it's, Warden Cain, that's Commissioner Cain, and he builds them in every prison. And we still have prisons that need chapels.
Okay.
Now, Billy Graham built a chapel for us in Angola. We've had some people help, but it always takes money. But the thing is, it's all inmate labor.
Right.
So what we can build a chapel for is pennies compared to what you would do it in the free world.
I said, because like I said, we're hoping that what we bring to people inspires and whatever. We'll have some information.
If they give to Christian City Fellowship, all they have to do is put prison ministry on there. I take that, and again, it will always be spent. Sometimes I surprise my guys with fruit. They get no fruit.
Oh, wow.
And of course, with fruit, you can turn it into alcohol. And I've seen stuff that, again.
Well, you see what I was thinking. I'm thinking bananas, apples.
Yeah, boy, we would have some good wine up there.
Wow.
But I bring my guys fruit, and to see a guy eat a grape, and he hasn't had a grape in decades, eat an apple, open a banana. I mean, this is like totally foreign to these guys.
And it's so strange because we don't even think about it. I mean,
No.
it's hard to believe that, you can't go to the kitchen and get an apple. But anyway, here's Christian City's website. You can go here, go all the way down to the bottom, find the information, connect with them, and donate if you feel.
No.
Now, if money, you said, is always good. Are you in need of items like pencils or?
It's too hard for me to take them to Mississippi.
Okay.
I used to carry with me a complete book of all of what I was teaching, and it just became burdensome to carry on and off of a plane and to do all of that. But I do have contacts in Mississippi, that can help with that.
Okay. So basically,
just anything and everything helps. And, but basically though, giving those guys a meal that they would never have, you can't imagine how appreciative. Now think back on my end, on my part, when I have an inmate that wants to buy me a meal
right
in prison.
Yeah.
That's very humbling.
Yes.
Because they don't have the money. Let me give you just kind of a pay scale. Is in the field, you get 2 cents an hour. We also have our teachers. We train and transition all of our teachers to be inmates and not free people. Saves the state a great amount of money because we pay an inmate 80 cents an hour to teach a GED class, to teach a math class, to teach welding, to teach auto mechanics, small engine, electrical, HVAC. And they get training. They get incredible training. And so we really want to equip them so that when they leave, they're very employable. We have people waiting for guys to get out of prison because they've proven themselves.
Well, I tell you, I think we could probably talk for 3 or 4 more hours, but we might run out of tape before we do it. But I want to say, anytime you have anything new or exciting, please come back, because we talked for 30 minutes before we even started. And I mean, we're just scratching the surface.
Well, it's always new and exciting every Sunday at Christian City.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's your plug for Christian City.
There you
Guys,
go.
if you're looking for somewhere to go, it's a beautiful church. And I've been to several of the events and very enjoyable. So I guess, do you have any parting words for anybody?
Well, this is what I do outside of Austin County. So
Okay.
a lot of people don't imagine or know. I don't talk about it a whole lot. I mean, my church knows, they all know, but yeah, I kind of have a life outside of Austin County and what I do in the prisons. Totally enjoy it. Like I said, it may be my last time. I never know. They just keep asking me to keep coming. And they give me incredible freedom and liberty to do what is right and what needs to be done. I went and viewed 3 prisons on my last trip because Cain just wanted me to get my eyes on them and tell us what can we do better, how can we do it. And so I absolutely adore what I'm doing, because when you help somebody, right, that's being more and more like Christ. And these guys need the help, but they appreciate the help.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming and joining us. In Austin County, you've got it. You've got the information. Christian City. Donations are always welcome, and we'll have all the information at the very end. And until next time, keep smiling.
Thank you.